You said people, you say that obey your job. Are we live? Oh, we are live. Interesting. That is not what I was trying to do. I didn't think I'd go live right away. So, well, regardless, here we are. I just wanted to catch you up. We're going to do a campaign diary to try and kind of catch up over the last couple episodes. We haven't exactly been on target with our episodes because, you know, things happen. Two people have moved very recently. People have been sick. Some of us lost our power for a week or more thanks to Tropical Storm Isaias. So we've been very busy. We've had people get stuck in cornfields. It's been madness. But we have gotten 2 episodes and some individual role playing. So just for you folks out in the public, our public viewers, because we had to put the stream private, I'm going to try and just run you through what happened in the campaign. I'm pretty happy with how it's been going so far. I just like to be playing a lot more often. But all things considered, I'm sorry because it's dark in here, because I did not expect to be going live immediately, so the lighting in here is pretty bad. But hey, we'll roll with it. If you're tuning in here, you're not expecting really, really high production values. My hair looks like a crazy person with this hair. Alright, so our second episode was, I think, the best one that I've run for this session, this campaign. I was really happy with it. So essentially what it came down to is at the end of the first episode, where I think I left off the campaign diary, is that the crew was leaving their home port. They were leaving Irian's New Amlin station on the good ship Esteem. They were leaving with both their cargo and their undocumented cargo. But once they were able to get out, they went through the Bowman accelerator, and they came out into subspace. Once they were out in subspace, they were able to proceed normally on their journey. However, they encountered a Navy vessel. And this Navy vessel had cut them in line to use the Bowman accelerator, which is something that, Navy vessels can do. This was a small session. We only had like 3 or so people, so I think that's why it maybe worked so well as it did, but it was still a really good session. So they were proceeding out, and they see in the distance in subspace there's this Navy vessel, and this Navy vessel is continuously calling them, giving them a proximity warning, telling them not to approach, not to approach, not to approach, that they're too close, and, giving them orders to increase speed or reduce speed or change their course. To the point where the crew can't actually comply. They can't make the ship go any faster. They can't make it go too much slower. They can't make the maneuvers that are being expected of them. And I actually let this play out fully over probably about 40 minutes or so, just to have the tension building very, very slowly, and that worked super well. The players were all really engaged. They were all really nervous. They were all coming up with plans. Eventually, they came up with a really good plan. Ethan's character, Mr. Goodwrench, he was the ship's engineer, and he took the illicit cargo that they had on board, and he took that and he stowed that down under the floorboards on the base level, or not under the floorboards, but under the floor paneling on the base level. And that made them feel secure. And then to try and escape from the Navy vessel that was not really hounding them, but just following them, what he attempted to do was he basically more or less staged an arcane meltdown of the reactor. So my approach to magic in this series is, well, yes, we are using Labyrinth Lore, that is a magical based thing, and the world this takes place in is the distant future of the same world I am writing my graduate school thesis in. It is a explicitly fantasy world. However, In the future, magic is dying. It is very rarely used by individual people. It's generally only used by groups of people or used for the purposes of building technology. And that has allowed great technology to spring up, but it's also forced that technology to be very analog. This is very analog. It's very manual technology. It takes a lot of. I think probably my biggest inspirations probably, I would say, the Alien universe might have been my biggest explanation. So it's kind of like Alien universe except with some magic technology, but it is very not glamorous, very sort of gritty science fiction, very manual. Dial-up punk is what we call it, and so have that in mind when I'm talking about the technology aspect of this. So Ethan does a brilliant plan. He's able to, something I never even thought of, but they're more or less able to stage a reactor meltdown by damaging the reactor in an easily repairable way, having more or less a leak of arcane radiation onto the lower levels, which is something that can be handled much quicker and much easier than nuclear radiation, which takes, quite honestly, forever, almost literally, to clean up. Arcane radiation will die out and go away and isn't nearly as nasty. But Ethan does this. There's a leak. They say, hey, look, we're in distress. We can't go any faster. You'll have to go around. But instead, the Navy vessel, and I rolled for this, had... so they said, no, we want to board. We're going to offer aid. So this Navy vessel is acting really, really suspiciously. Suspiciously enough that they call the nearest subspace station, and they also call a nearby freighter, nearby deep space freighter, to say, hey, look, if anything happens to us, we need you to be on the lookout for this weird Navy vessel. Mr. Rosso, who used to work for the Navy, that's Gabrielle's character, he used to work for the Navy, and he realizes that this is not a normal Navy ship. This looks like a research vessel that's been sort of outfitted for some sort of military use. It is not by any means a normal vessel. So now their alarms are all going off, but they let the people inside. They bring in, there's an engineer, and there is a second mate, and there is this commander, whose name escapes me right now. I believe it's Commander Mathis, but Commander Mathis is not a very nice person. She is very distrusting of the crew. She definitely believes that they're up to something, and she goes out of her way to make life as difficult for them as possible. She has her men wreck sort of the interior of the boat. Personal rooms are kind of torn apart. While the engineering staff and the first mate do, to their credit, go help Mr. Goodwrench repairing the issues with the engine that he himself caused. It was interesting because Mr. Goodwrench got to talk to his fellow engineer, and they kind of forged a little bit of a kinship, and this guy was able to tell him a little bit about like why this was so strange, why Commander Mathis is so upset, and a few other things, just sort of a little bit of the weirdness that's been going on. And this gentleman was not aware of very much else. And then you also had, on the other hand, you had the first mate who seemed kind of down in the dumps, but regardless, this leak was able to work. They were able to easily fix the thing while their ship was searched. The lower levels could not be searched easily because of the radiation, and nobody cared to go down there. Through some smart play, Harley's character was able to win the trust of some of the men. She offered them snacks. She was a lot nicer to them than their own commander, and so they weren't really doing too good a job on purpose because their commander is kind of an ass. But it was good. The players were playing smart. The only person who couldn't really do that was Tasha's character, the Captain Granny, as she likes to be called. Because she had a brief interaction with Commander Mathis and had pretended to be somebody else during that encounter, she spent more or less the entire session giving orders and hiding in the vents, moving from place to place, trying to listen to different conversations, but she had to hide so she would not be recognized as the captain. So Mr. Arneson, the NPC first mate, had a little adventure where he became the captain for a brief period, and he did not do a great job. He was not very convincing, but nevertheless, they got away with it. Eventually, the Navy crew, they couldn't prove anything. The commander was called away to investigate another nearby ship, and they were left after a very, very tense session. The players were very tense. It was only 3. It kept them on edge. It worked super well. It was a really exciting session to run. There was a lot of good role-playing. There was a lot of good thinking. It was, overall, was a really good session. I was very happy with the players. They responded really well to it. And then they sailed through space for about a week. And that brings us back to our arrival at their destination. They're traveling through space! They arrive at the home planet of Harley's character Charity, which is the... how would I try? It's not. I don't want to describe it as a casino planet, because having a planet with like a single economic feature is just really unrealistic. But Ardos 2 it's relatively far away. It's a smaller planet. It's a water planet. There's very little to no exposed land, and the land that would be above the water would not be very pleasant for living on. It's a very windy, somewhat harsh world above the water, but underneath it has relatively calm, shallow seas. And under those seas, there are several underwater cities constructed. Due to this not being a great environment for raw materials, this was sort of intentionally made into a business hub on this side of the space inside the Hodgson Belt. And the city that they live in, as they're going to, is Fortunata. And Fortunata is kind of almost like, I keep describing it as like Vegas crossed over with Bangkok. It's a very urban city. There's a lot of gambling. There's a lot of big business doing things in the shadows, and there's a whole lot of side business going on. But it's a very prosperous, very large, very wealthy undersea civilization. I am very proud of how I described it in one of my one-on-one sessions. But that session really, really left off. They got off at the station. There is the big station, Fortunata Station. They had more or less a night-out adventure to try and relieve some tension. There was a smoothie bar. There was a brawl at a roller derby nightclub. It was a roller disco. It was a roller disco on a space station. They had a brawl on a roller disco. And that was a lot of fun. They were able to start a brawl. They escaped. They went to go see a movie all together in one of the space station theaters. It was all very fun. They also met with Mr. Fernandez. Mr. Fernandez is their local handler. He was able to get them a job where they'll be going pretty far out into the Caldorian Verge. They'll be going out into the middle to the appropriately named Midway Station. And I'm excited because I have something very special planned for Midway Station. It's very cool. I love the aspect of sort of traveling to these isolated space stations out in the middle of nowhere, especially the ones where there isn't a planet or a city at the bottom. And Midway is one of those. It's way out in the middle of nowhere. It's kind of almost like a interstellar subspace truck stop. I like that. I like that a whole lot. I mean, why wouldn't there be that? Of course there'd be that. If you have these long-haul deliveries that need to be made between planets, you're going to have a place to stop and refuel, unless you have some sort of device that can go without refueling. But in this world, because you are not traditionally moving through the stars, you are passing from real space into compacted subspace, like how a wizard how a wizard would shadow walk. It lets you not have to have power that can last for hundreds, if not thousands of years. It does allow you to refuel and get supplies and such. That allows you to have smaller ships than you would traditionally see in science fiction. Yet, I don't necessarily love calling it science fiction, because you could really say it's science fantasy, because it has both. It has both, to the best of my ability, realistic technology, realistic manual, more analog, early computer technology, along with how that would interact with magic. That was one of my huge goals, because it is a fantasy world. It is a world built in which fantasy, not just fantasy, but magic is very real. Magic is a state of being. It is a true and real thing, but we also have very advanced technology. And technology that is not advanced by being more efficient, but by being larger and more analog and more simple and sort of pushed to its boundaries. And I love both those feelings. I think they play really well together. So I guess you could say it is a science fantasy. I don't like to use that term a ton, though, because I think that has a lot of negative connotations. It's not a space fairy tale. It's not a space opera. It's not a space opera. But I digress. I've gotten a little off the beaten trail. But they're running around the space station. It's more or less like a big airport. And they have a fantastic time. It was a very fun session. It was a short session. It was a late session. It was a everybody needs to blow off some steam in real life session. And you need those every once in a while. As a dungeon master, you need to recognize when your party has had enough, when they just want to chill out and be real friends playing as virtual friends, or friends on paper, and they had a blast. It was great to let them boil down, do a little bit of world building through their explorations of chain restaurants and snack bars and vending machines, which is always fun. Subtle world building helps you set a tone that otherwise you'd just be telling people about. It's part of the old writing adage, which is an incredibly true adage, which is you need to show and not tell. You need to show what's different, show what's going on, show what's happening, show the world in subtle ways, and how the characters do, and how they eat, and how they sleep, and how they drink. And I'm really taking seriously the world building in this. So the world building is, sometimes it's a little overwhelming, sometimes I do tend to hit people over the head with information, which is the one thing I think I really regret from one of my one-on-one sessions. To try and make up for not having any one big session for quite a while, I tried to have more one-on-one sessions, just individual role plays with individual characters. And one that I had with Matt, and he's newcomer to tabletop. He's so far seems to be doing a great job. He's enjoying it. His character, I think, could use a little more agency, but other than that, I think he's been responding really well. But he is a K9 Beastkin. He is one of 4 K9 Beastkin on the crew, including his cousin Slate, and they have not had meat in over a week, thanks to Harley's character Charity not really planning ahead about what kind of food they're going to bring with them on their space voyage. And so that there's a little side quest where the first mate, who is also a K9 Beastkin, took the other 3 K9 Beastkin, including Matt's character, out for a fancy meat dinner once they landed at Fortunata. They went down onto the planet. So I give a very, very in-depth description of what was seen when they went down onto the planet to really try and set the scene. And while I think Matt really appreciated it, he's a very literary person, I think I did hit with a little too much information. It took a very long time to get to the restaurant where they ended up having their conversation. And it's revealed that Matt did some really good roleplay where he shows that he's not really adjusted to his culture, the culture of his people, because he was raised by humans. Even though he's close with his cousin, he was raised in a human family. He does not really relate very well to the culture of his people. So it was an interesting struggle to see him. Not really a struggle. It was really some really well done role play on his part to see his character struggling with, how do I eat this food? What's normal to eat with this food? How is it normal to eat? And he's like, there's one part where he turns around and asks his cousin, and he said, so do we take our clothes off or what? And because, they're about to eat meat with their bare hands. That's how meat is traditionally consumed in this restaurant and in their culture. And his cousin goes, no, please don't take your clothes off. Like, we're still in public here. That was a funny moment. It also revealed something about Matt's character, that he's looking for a girl that used to work for his parents, a girl that he went to school with, who allegedly he had not allegedly, but he had a friendship with this girl, and they're both interested in making more of it, but they were separated, and she evidently did quite a lot of traveling, and very briefly she was on Fortunata, and someone in the restaurant happened to know her, and as it turns out, she now lives way on the other side of the Kaldorian Verge, but the players might be going there in the near future if they follow the plot lines that I might present them with, because I've got a couple of good plot lines coming up. And that brings me back to the other big one-on-one RP session that I had was with Tasha as the captain. She is very caring about her crew. I think that's an aspect of her character as of Captain Speclonin, Captain Granny, is that she does that kind of like everybody's grandmother, and that's part of her character, but I think it is also really, it shows a lot of strength from Tasha as a character. She's been doing a great job in that captain role, though I don't think she thinks she is, but she is. She's done very well at navigating the presented crises and caring for her crew. But she's been taking a little bit of time. She set aside some time during the week, and she'll get to know some of the characters that are on her ship. She'll go and get to know some of the NPCs. There's a crew of, I believe, 23 or 24 people on the Esteem, and so she feels it very important to get to know each of them. So she talked to the amateur boxer, Mr. Liraw, who is one of the K9 Beastkin, and she spoke to Mr. Mendez, who is one of the engineers, who always wears a cowboy hat, and someday wants to retire from space to become a florist like his mother. Or is it his father? I don't remember which. One of his parents is a florist, the other was a baker. I like making interesting NPCs. Non-typical NPCs. You gotta make your NPCs. Don't try, this is one of the good advice that I've heard is like, don't try to make NPCs memorable, but give them all a memorable feature. Like, Mr. Mendez is the one who wears a cowboy hat. Other than that, he doesn't interfere with the story, doesn't do anything, but he's there on the ship. You know he's down there. He's probably down in the engineering office, or he's up in his room, and he's got his cowboy hat on, and maybe he's looking at flowers. One or two things to remember. And then there is also the youngest member of the crew, and the last K9 Beastkin is Mr. Forbath. Mr. Forbath was young. He was also hiding in the vents when the Navy showed up. As it turns out, the captain was able to find out that he was in some legal trouble. Or he had been in some legal trouble for defending his mother from somebody that had attacked them. And it turns out he was actually a very, very nice guy, very, very quiet guy. But she's been building a relationship with her crew one at a time, and I think, she'll talk to Mr. Cronin. Mr. Cronin, the experienced navigator, who's an avid reader, and sometimes an avid reader of romance novels. But besides that, she got to know the crew really well. Otherwise, there's been little side sessions, little sub-talks about people. So this next episode, I suspect there will be a lot more roleplay. I had kind of hoped to have more combat. That was part of the big reason that I chose Labyrinth Lord over Pathfinder, was how much I wanted to streamline combat down, and how much I think Labyrinth Lord presented that a lot better than Pathfinder. But all the opportunities for combat have been circumnavigated by the characters. Very briefly, there was the brawl in the disco, the roller disco, but that was hardly barely a combat. That was more a series of skill checks and probability checks with the D100s, and they were able to navigate around that. There was something that they don't know about that they circumnavigated. Two things, actually, that they circumnavigated by just doing things, going down a different path. And the players seem to be okay with that. We've always been a pretty roleplay heavy group. And I think the nature of this campaign, with sort of shady underworld dealings, seems to be a little more suited to a heavy RP. But I really do want to get them involved in some combat soon. They could definitely use some combat real soon. But I suspect it to be another roleplay heavy night. Gabrielle's character, through Mr. Fernandez, has a meeting with a Captain Burton, a fellow Crane and Company captain who is former Navy and might have some interesting information about why the why that Navy vessel was acting so strangely earlier. And let's see, the captain has a meeting with Mr. Mallory. Mr. Mallory works for the Civil Consulting Corporation, and they were the ones who ordered the so-called illicit goods from Irian that were placed upon the Steam. Though Mr. Mallory seemed very baffled by the fact that they would be considered to be illicit, as they did apparently have all the correct paperwork on his end. But he did have offer of another job. Mr. Fernandez also has them booked for a new flight 12 days from their landing to go out to Midway Station, and the captain's been sort of just going through taking care of business. And I believe that's going to catch you folks up on everything. I hope you're enjoying this content. This is kind of the best we can do for right now just because of circumstances, but we are playing tonight for sure, and then hopefully I'll have another campaign diary up for you this upcoming week. I also promised you folks other content for the channel, and yes, I can actually tell you for a fact that there is other content coming. I am working on a literary video essay about Pokemon. It sounds like it might be a little weird and it might be a little off topic, but it's something that I'm very interested in. I think I am onto something with this video. It's going to be a very interesting video. It'll probably be pretty long, so I'll hope to have that up maybe sometime in August, probably sometime in September. And I think that'll be one big step to having non-just game streams on this channel. But it is an absolute pleasure to be making stuff for this channel. I know I haven't always been the most consistent with things, but life happens, the summer happens. As we sort of move back into fall, people's schedules tend to normalize. So I hope you'll stick with us when we normalize. Excuse my burping. And hope you all are having a fantastic day. I'll be putting up a campaign diary sometime this upcoming week to tell you about how tonight goes. I hope it goes well. I have some more plot points that may not seem like they go together, but I promise they do. And I can't wait to tell you folks all about them. I know this one was a little bit rushed, but I've got a game to still prep, and we're going to start in about an hour. And it's late, and I'm trying to sum up a bunch of different things that have happened across over a month. So, hope you folks are having a great day. Good night. Have a good day Sunday tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and goodbye. Yes, I want to end the stream. Yes, end the stream!